The champagne fountain sparkled under the crystal chandelier, and 200 guests applauded as my husband Adrian took the microphone to renew our wedding vows. 10 years of marriage, he'd said when planning this party. 10 years deserved a celebration. I stood beside him in my ivory dress, not white. That would have been too bridal. And watched him smile that smile I'd fallen in love with a decade ago. The smile that crockled the corners of his eyes. The smile that had once made me feel like the only woman in the world. Isabella, he said, turning to me with the microphone, you've been my rock, my partner, the woman who stood by me through everything. The crowd murmured appreciation. Our friends, our family, his business partners, all of them watching this touching moment of marital devotion. And I want to take this opportunity, Adrian continued, to introduce everyone to someone very special. Someone who's been instrumental in helping me become the man I am today. My heart stopped. He wouldn't. He couldn't possibly. Everyone, please welcome Vanessa Monroe, my executive assistant and my closest confidant. She emerged from the crowd like she'd been waiting for her cue. Vanessa Monroe, 28 years old, blonde hair cascading down her back. Wearing a dress that was absolutely inappropriate for someone who wasn't the bride. It was champagne-colored, form-fitting, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The crowd's applause was confused, uncertain. People looked at each other, trying to understand why Adrian's assistant was being introduced at his vow renewal ceremony. Vanessa has been working closely with me for the past 2 years, Adrian said, and I heard the double meaning even if no one else did. She's helped me restructure my company, expand into new markets, and honestly, I couldn't have done any of it without her. Vanessa reached the stage. Yes, Adrian had insisted on a stage for this event, and stood on his other side. She smiled at me, and I saw it clearly. The triumph in her eyes. The message. I've won. I kept my face arranged in what I hoped looked like polite interest. My hands, holding the bouquet of white roses Adrian had given me an hour ago, didn't shake. My smile didn't waver, because I'd known about Vanessa for 4 months, had known she was sleeping with my husband since I'd found the hotel receipts in his car, had known that this vow renewal ceremony wasn't about celebrating our marriage, it was about Adrian showing off, showing his mistress that he could have both of us, showing me that I was replaceable. What Adrian didn't know was that I'd spent those 4 months preparing, planning, protecting myself in ways he couldn't imagine. Let's toast, Adrian said, raising his champagne glass, to partnership, to loyalty, to the people who make us better. The crowd raised their glasses uncertainly. I raised mine too, meeting Vanessa's eyes over the rim. She smiled wider, thinking she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. To partnership, I repeated, my voice steady, and to getting exactly what we deserve. Adrian didn't hear the steel in my tone, didn't see the quiet rage I'd been banking for months. He just smiled and drank his champagne, basking in the attention of 200 guests who had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of his downfall. Later, people would ask me how I stayed so calm, how I didn't scream or throw things or make a scene. They'd want to know if I'd suspected, if I'd known, if I'd seen it coming. I'd tell them the truth. I'd seen it coming from miles away, and I'd prepared accordingly. But in that moment, standing on stage beside my husband and his mistress, wearing my ivory dress and holding my bouquet, I just smiled. Because there's a certain power in knowing something your enemy doesn't. There's strength in patience, and there's justice in letting someone dig their own grave while you hold the shovel. Adrian kissed my cheek. Thank you for being such a good sport about this. I know having Vanessa here is a little unconventional, but she's important to me. Of course, I said sweetly. We should always honor the people who are important to us. Vanessa laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. You're so understanding, Isabella. Adrian said you would be. Understanding, that's what they thought I was. Understanding, accommodating, the supportive wife who'd never question or challenge or fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The party continued around us. Dinner was served, a 5-course meal that Adrian had insisted on. Despite my suggesting we keep things simpler, a string quartet played classical music that Adrian had chosen. The cake, a towering confection that Adrian had ordered without asking my opinion, was wheeled out to more applause. Everything was Adrian's vision, his celebration. I was just the prop standing beside him, wearing the right dress, saying the right words, playing the role of devoted wife. But I'd learned something important over the past 4 months. Sometimes the best way to win is to let your opponent think they've already won. Let them get comfortable. Let them get careless. And then strike when they least expect it. "Speech," someone called from the crowd. "Isabella, give us a speech." Adrian looked at me, slightly surprised. We hadn't planned for me to speak. This was his show, his moment, but I took the microphone from him with a smile. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said, my voice carrying across the ballroom. 10 years ago, I married Adrian, believing in forever, believing in partnership, in loyalty, in the sacred bond of marriage. People smiled, nodding. A few women dabbed at their eyes. I believe that, when you stand before everyone you love and promise to honor and cherish someone, you mean it. Those words aren't just ceremony, they're commitment. Adrian shifted beside me, sensing something he couldn't quite identify. Tonight, we're renewing those vows, reaffirming that commitment. And I want everyone here to remember this moment. Remember what we promise each other. Because promises matter. Honoring your word matters. And when someone breaks that sacred trust, I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Well, there are consequences. I handed the microphone back to Adrian. The crowd applauded, though some people looked confused by my tone. Good. Let them be confused. Let them wonder. Vanessa's smile had faltered slightly. Adrian looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, part suspicion, part concern. "That was lovely, darling," he said, but his voice had an edge to it. "I meant every word," I replied. The party wound down eventually. Guests left with their party favors, expensive bottles of wine that Adrian had insisted on, though we could barely afford them. The vendors packed up their equipment. The ballroom that had been so full of life and music and light slowly emptied until it was just Adrian, Vanessa, and me. "I should go," Vanessa said, though she made no move to leave. She was waiting for something. Permission, maybe, or an invitation. "Stay," Adrian said. "We're going to the after-party at the hotel bar. You should come." He said it so casually, so carelessly, as if inviting his mistress to drinks after our vow renewal ceremony was the most normal thing in the world. "Actually," I said, "I'm exhausted. I think I'll head home. You two go ahead." Adrian looked relieved. "You sure?" "Absolutely. You've worked so hard planning this party. You should enjoy it." Vanessa's smile returned, triumphant again. She thought I was giving up, stepping aside, making it easy for them. I kissed Adrian's cheek. "Happy anniversary, darling. Happy anniversary." I left them standing in the empty ballroom, already moving closer together, already forgetting I existed. I walked out to my car, not the one Adrian and I shared, but my own car that I'd purchased 3 months ago with money from my private account, and drove away. Not home to the house we'd bought together 7 years ago, not to the life we'd built together, but to my new apartment across town, the one Adrian didn't know about, the one I'd been furnishing slowly, carefully, with things that were mine and mine alone. Inside, I hung up my ivory dress, washed off my makeup, changed into comfortable clothes, and then I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. On the screen was a document I'd been updating for 4 months, a comprehensive record of everything Adrian had done. Every lie, every hotel receipt, every text message I'd found, every financial transaction that raised red flags, every piece of evidence that proved what he'd been doing behind my back. But more than that, it contained my plan. The strategy I'd been building piece by piece, move by move, while Adrian thought I was oblivious. Tomorrow, that plan would begin to unfold. Tomorrow, Adrian would start to realize that bringing his mistress to our vow renewal ceremony had been a mistake, that underestimating his wife had been an even bigger mistake. Tomorrow, the consequences I'd warned about in my speech would begin. But tonight, I allowed myself one moment of pure emotion, one moment where I didn't have to be strategic or careful or composed. I sat in my new apartment, in my comfortable clothes, in the life I was building without him, and I cried. Not because I still loved him. That love had died the day I found those hotel receipts. Not because I wanted him back. I didn't, not even a little. But because grieving was necessary. Because acknowledging the death of what I'd thought we had was part of moving forward. I cried for the woman I'd been 10 years ago, standing in a white dress and promising forever to a man who would betray her. I cried for all the moments I'd ignored red flags because I wanted to believe in us. I cried for the future I'd imagined that would never exist. And then I stopped crying, dried my tears, looked at my reflection in the mirror, and saw someone stronger than the woman who'd married Adrian 10 years ago. Someone smarter. Someone who wouldn't be manipulated or dismissed or replaced. I saw a woman who'd been underestimated her entire marriage, who'd been treated like arm candy, a trophy wife, a pretty face with no substance, who'd been expected to smile and nod and never question, never challenge, never demand more. Adrian had made a fundamental error. He'd mistaken kindness for weakness, patience for stupidity, silence for acceptance. He was about to learn the difference. I opened my phone and sent a single text message to my lawyer. "It's time. File the papers in the morning." Her response came immediately. "Finally, let's destroy him." Not destroy, I wanted to say. That implied emotion, vindictiveness, letting anger make me messy. No, what I was doing was precise, surgical, justified. I wasn't destroying Adrian. I was simply making sure he got exactly what he deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. And what he deserved was to lose everything he'd taken for granted. His wife, his money, his reputation, his sense of control. He'd thought he could have it all. The devoted wife at home and the exciting mistress on the side. The stability of marriage and the thrill of an affair. The respect that came with being a married man and the freedom that came with betrayal. He was wrong. You don't get to have it all when you've sacrificed everything to get it. I looked at the calendar on my wall. Monday morning, the divorce papers would be filed. Tuesday, the financial audits I'd requested would begin. Wednesday, the board meeting where several of Adrian's investors would receive some very interesting information about how he'd been spending company money. By Friday, Adrian's perfect life would be in ruins, and I'd be standing in the wreckage, untouched, protected by months of careful planning. People would call it revenge. They'd say I'd been vindictive, cruel, excessive. They'd claim I could have handled it quietly, privately, without public humiliation. But Adrian had humiliated me publicly, had brought his mistress to our vow renewal ceremony and forced me to stand there and smile, had made me complicit in my own betrayal. Turnabout was fair play. I returned to my desk and reviewed the plan one more time. Every detail, every contingency, every possible outcome. I'd learned this from watching Adrian run his business. You succeeded not by being the smartest person in the room, but by being the most prepared. And I'd been preparing for 4 months. 4 months of gathering evidence, building cases, protecting assets, creating alternative accounts, documenting everything. 4 months of smiling through dinners where Adrian and Vanessa exchanged knowing looks. 4 months of playing the oblivious wife while secretly being 10 steps ahead. It had been exhausting. Lonely. Sometimes I wanted to confront him immediately, to scream and throw things and demand he acknowledge what he'd done. But I'd held back, stayed patient, kept playing the role, because I'd learned something important. The person who controls their emotions controls the situation. Adrian was impulsive, passionate, driven by ego and desire. I was calculated, strategic, driven by the need for justice. He'd never stood a chance. My phone rang. My mother. "How was the party?" she asked. Enlightening. "Isabella, what's wrong? You sound strange." "Nothing's wrong, Mom. Everything's exactly right. Did something happen? Adrian introduced his mistress to everyone at our vow renewal ceremony. Silence. Then, he did what? Don't worry, I have it handled. Isabella. I really do have it handled, Mom. Trust me. By this time next week, everyone will know exactly what kind of man Adrian is. What are you planning? Justice. I'm planning justice. We talked for a few more minutes. My mother vacillating between wanting to support me and wanting to talk me out of whatever I was planning. Eventually, I convinced her to trust me, to wait, to let events unfold. After we hung up, I made one more call to my best friend Simone, who'd been helping me plan this for months. How'd it go? She asked. He actually did it. Brought her to the party, introduced her to everyone, acted like it was completely normal. Unbelievable. No, completely believable. That's who Adrian is. That's who he's always been. I just didn't want to see it. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. The papers get filed tomorrow? First thing in the morning. Good. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Yes, I agreed. He does. We said goodnight, and I finally allowed myself to feel it. Not sadness, or anger, or pain, but anticipation. Tomorrow, the game began. Tomorrow, Adrian would start to understand that actions have consequences. That betrayal comes with a price. Tomorrow, I stopped being the understanding wife and became something else entirely. Something he should have been afraid of all along. I woke Monday morning to my alarm at 6 a.m., the early light filtering through the curtains of my new apartment. For a moment, I lay there, letting myself feel the full weight of what was about to happen. Today wasn't just the beginning of my divorce, it was the beginning of my new life. The coffee maker I'd bought for this apartment, a luxury model that Adrian would have called wasteful, brewed while I showered. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit. Professional and powerful. Not the soft, feminine clothes Adrian preferred me to wear. Not the pastels and florals of the understanding wife. This was armor. My lawyer, Patricia Moreno, had scheduled the filing for 9 a.m. The courthouse opened at 8, and she wanted to be first in line to ensure everything processed quickly. Adrian would be served the papers by noon. Are you ready for this? Patricia had asked me during our final meeting last week. Once we file, there's no going back. This becomes public, real, permanent. I've been ready for 4 months. He's going to fight. Men like Adrian don't accept losing gracefully. Let him fight. We have documentation for everything. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, text messages, emails. We have proof he's been funneling company money to Vanessa, buying her gifts, paying her rent, funding her lifestyle. We have evidence of financial infidelity on top of the affair. The financial infidelity is what will bury him, especially since some of that money came from the joint account. Exactly. Now, sitting in my apartment with my coffee, I reviewed the divorce petition one final time. Patricia had done excellent work. The document was thorough, detailed, and devastating. It outlined Adrian's affair, the financial impropriety, the emotional abandonment. It requested a complete audit of our joint assets, including Adrian's business accounts. It asked for spousal support, not because I needed it, but because Adrian deserved to pay. Most importantly, it included a clause Patricia had suggested, a request that all marital assets be frozen pending the completion of the financial audit. That meant Adrian couldn't sell anything, transfer any money, or hide any assets. Everything would be locked down until we knew exactly what was ours and what was his. Adrian was going to panic when he saw that clause. He'd probably call me immediately, demanding I drop it, threatening to fight, trying to negotiate. I wouldn't answer his calls. My phone rang at 8:30. Simone, just checking in. How are you feeling? Surprisingly calm. You'd think I'd be nervous, but I just feel ready. That's because you've done the work. You've prepared for every possible outcome. There's nothing to be nervous about. Thank you for helping me through all of this. I couldn't have done it without you. That's what best friends are for. Helping you burn down the life of your cheating husband, We're not burning anything down. We're just redistributing assets. Simone laughed. Whatever helps you sleep at night. At 9:05, Patricia texted. Papers filed. He'll be served at his office around noon. Prepare yourself, he's going to call. I put my phone on silent. The morning dragged. I'd taken the day off from my job. I was a senior accountant at a firm downtown, though Adrian always introduced me as his wife first. My career a distant second. I'd already given my boss a heads up about the divorce, and she'd been supportive. Take whatever time you need, she'd said. I've been through a divorce myself. It's hell, but you'll survive it. I wasn't just planning to survive. I was planning to thrive. At 11:30, I drove to the house Adrian and I shared. I had my own key, of course, but I'd already moved most of my important belongings to the new apartment over the past 3 months. Today was about getting the last few things. Photo albums, some books, a few pieces of furniture that had belonged to my grandmother. The moving truck I'd rented was parked on the street. 2 men I'd hired helped me load everything quickly and efficiently. We were done by 12:15. I was loading the last box when Adrian's car screeched into the driveway. He got out, his face red, papers clutched in his hand. The divorce petition. He'd been served. Isabella, what the hell is this? I looked at him calmly. It's a divorce petition. I thought that was fairly clear. You can't just... He was sputtering, unable to form complete sentences. We renewed our vows last night. No, Adrian, you put on a show last night. There's a difference. This is insane. You're being irrational. I'm being irrational? You brought your mistress to our vow renewal ceremony. You introduced her to our friends and family. You humiliated me in front of 200 people. And I'm the irrational one? Vanessa isn't my mistress. She's my colleague. Please don't insult my intelligence. I've known about the affair for 4 months. The hotel rooms you booked in her name. The gifts you bought with our money. The rent you've been paying on her apartment. His face went pale. You knew? I knew? And I've been documenting everything. Every hotel receipt, every credit card charge, every text message. I have proof, Adrian. Undeniable proof. You were spying on me? I was protecting myself. There's a difference. He looked at the moving truck, the boxes being loaded. What are you doing? Taking what's mine. I have a list of everything I'm removing from the house. All of it is either mine personally or gifts from my family. Nothing that's jointly owned. You can't just leave. Watch me. Isabella, we need to talk about this. We can work this out. I made a mistake, yes, but we can fix this. A mistake? Adrian, you've been sleeping with Vanessa for 2 years. You've been spending our money on her. You brought her to our vow renewal ceremony. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices, over and over again. I love you. I still love you. No, you don't. You love what I represented. The stable, understanding wife at home. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. He grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firmly enough that the moving men noticed. One of them started walking toward us. Let go of me, I said quietly. We're not done talking. Yes, we are. Let go or I'll call the police and add assault to the divorce filing. He released my arm, stepping back. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. You're going to regret it. When you've had time to calm down, to think clearly, you're going to realize you've made a huge mistake. I smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Adrian, the only mistake I made was marrying you. Everything since then has been remarkably clear-headed. I got into my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the driveway, still holding the divorce papers, finally beginning to understand that his comfortable life was over. The moving truck followed me to my apartment. The men helped me unload, and I tipped them generously. By 2 p.m., I was surrounded by boxes in my new living room, officially moved out of the house I'd shared with Adrian. My phone had 17 missed calls from Adrian, 3 from Vanessa, 2 from Adrian's mother, who'd apparently already heard. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called Patricia. He's been served. He showed up at the house while I was moving out. Did he threaten you? Not exactly. He grabbed my arm, but I handled it. The moving men were witnesses if we need them. Good. Document everything. If he contacts you again, don't engage. Everything goes through me from this point forward. Understood? Isabella, you should know. I got a call from his lawyer. Someone named Preston Blake. He's already trying to negotiate. What does he want? He's suggesting mediation. Says Adrian wants to work things out. Keep this out of court. Avoid public embarrassment. What did you tell him? That my client is not interested in mediation at this time. That if Mr. Whitmore wants to negotiate, he can do it through formal legal channels after the financial audit is complete. Perfect. He also tried to get me to drop the asset freeze, said it was unnecessarily punitive. And I told him it stays until we know exactly where all the money went, especially the money Mr. Whitmore spent on his mistress. I smiled. You're really good at your job. That's why you hired me. After we hung up, I started unpacking. It felt therapeutic, creating order in this new space. Every item I put away was a step further from my old life. Every box I emptied was closure on the marriage I thought would last forever. My phone rang again. My mother. Sweetheart, I heard. Adrian's mother called me. She's very upset. I'm sure she is. She says you're being unreasonable. That every marriage has rough patches. That you're throwing away 10 years over a mistake. Mom, whose side are you on? Yours, always yours. But I had to tell you what she said. A rough patch is forgetting anniversaries or arguing about money. Carrying on a 2-year affair and bringing your mistress to your vow renewal ceremony is not a rough patch. I know that. I'm just warning you, Adrian's family is going to push back. They're going to try to paint you as vindictive and irrational. Let them. I have evidence, documentation, proof. They can say whatever they want. The truth will speak for itself. You've really thought this through, haven't you? I've had 4 months to think it through. 4 months of knowing what he was doing while everyone around me thought we were the perfect couple. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed to be sure. I needed to gather evidence. I needed to protect myself financially and legally. And I needed to do it all while Adrian thought I was oblivious. That must have been exhausting. It was, but it was necessary. We talked for a while longer, my mother expressing her support while also worrying about me. It was her nature to worry, but I wasn't worried. For the first time in 4 months, I felt clear-headed, decisive, strong. That evening, I treated myself to takeout from my favorite restaurant, Thai food that Adrian always said was too spicy. I ate it in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes, and it tasted like freedom. My phone buzzed with a text. Not from Adrian or Vanessa or any of the people I was ignoring. From Simone. Heard about the serving. How'd he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of denial, some bargaining, eventual anger, the full stages of grief. Good, he deserves to grieve. Is the asset freeze in place? Yes. He can't touch anything until the audit is complete. That's going to kill him. His whole identity is wrapped up in his money and his business. I know. You're incredible, you know that? The way you've handled all of this, the planning, the patience, the execution. It's impressive. I learned from watching Adrian. He taught me that success comes from preparation. He just didn't realize I'd use those lessons against him. After dinner, I unpacked more boxes. Found photo albums from our wedding, from trips we'd taken, from holidays with family. I should have felt sad looking at them. Should have mourned what we'd had. But all I felt was relief that it was over. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I froze. Adrian didn't know about this apartment. I'd been careful about that. But he was resourceful. He could have followed me. Could have hired someone to track me down. I looked through the peephole. Vanessa. I almost didn't open the door. But curiosity won out. I wanted to hear what she had to say. What excuse she'd concocted. What justification she'd invented for sleeping with a married man. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Isabella, she said, and she had the audacity to look contrite. We need to talk. No, we really don't. Please, just 5 minutes. Why? What could you possibly say that I'd want to hear? I didn't mean for this to happen. Adrian and I, it just developed naturally. We work together constantly. We have chemistry. It wasn't planned. So that makes it okay? That you accidentally fell into bed with my husband? I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just explaining. Vanessa, I don't need your explanation. I need you to leave. Adrian loves you. He never wanted to hurt you. That made me laugh, bitter and sharp. He loves me? He brought you to our vow renewal ceremony. He introduced you to everyone we know. He humiliated me publicly. That's not love. That's cruelty. He was trying to be honest. Stop hiding. He was showing off, proving he could have both of us. And you're delusional if you think it was about anything else. You're just angry. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, and I'm done with this conversation. Leave. Isabella, leave, or I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. She left, finally, and I locked the door behind her, leaned against it, breathing deeply, fighting the urge to scream. The nerve of that woman, coming to my home, my new home that was supposed to be my sanctuary, and trying to justify the affair, trying to make it sound inevitable, natural, somehow not their fault. I'd known people could be selfish, but I'd never quite understood how completely some people could absolve themselves of responsibility. How they could rewrite history in their own minds until they were somehow the victims. Adrian had convinced himself he loved me while sleeping with Vanessa. Vanessa had convinced herself the affair just happened naturally. They'd both created narratives where they weren't the villains. But I knew the truth, and soon everyone else would too. The financial audit would reveal where the money had gone. The divorce proceedings would make the affair public record, and the carefully cultivated image Adrian had built, the successful businessman with the perfect marriage, would crumble. That wasn't revenge. That was consequences. I finished unpacking that night, transforming my apartment from a collection of boxes into a home. My home, the first place that had been truly mine since I'd married Adrian. Before bed, I allowed myself one moment of reflection. 10 years ago, I'd married Adrian believing in forever. Believing he was my partner, my equal, my other half. I'd supported his business, managed our home, played the role of perfect wife, and in return, he'd betrayed me, used me, taken me for granted. But his betrayal had taught me something valuable. I didn't need him. I didn't need his money or his status or his approval. I was capable, intelligent, and strong enough to stand on my own. Adrian had thought I was dependent on him. That I'd accept whatever scraps of affection he threw my way. That I'd be too scared or too weak to leave. He'd been wrong about all of it. Tomorrow, the financial audit would begin. The forensic accountants I'd hired would start going through Adrian's business records, our joint accounts, every financial transaction from the past 3 years. They'd find the money he'd spent on Vanessa, the company funds he'd misappropriated, the loans he'd taken out without my knowledge, and when they were done, Adrian's perfect life would be in ruins. I should have felt guilty about that. Should have felt some remorse about destroying the life we'd built together. But I didn't, because Adrian had destroyed it first. I was just making sure everyone knew. Tuesday morning, I woke to 18 more missed calls from Adrian and a string of increasingly desperate text messages. Isabella, please answer your phone. We need to talk about this like adults. You're making a huge mistake. My lawyer says you're requesting a complete financial audit. That's going to destroy my business. Please just talk to me. We can work this out. I deleted them all without responding. Patricia had been clear. No contact with Adrian except through lawyers. Every text, every call, every attempt at manipulation needed to be documented but not engaged with. Adrian was used to charming his way out of consequences. I wasn't going to give him that opportunity. Instead, I got dressed and drove to my job. I'd taken yesterday off for the move, but I needed to maintain normalcy, needed to show that my life was continuing, stable and productive, while Adrian's fell apart. My coworkers had heard about the divorce. News traveled fast in our social circle. Several of them offered sympathetic looks, which I accepted with quiet dignity. One of my colleagues, Timothy, stopped by my office mid-morning. "Hey, I heard about you and Adrian. I'm sorry. Thank you. If you need anything, someone to talk to, help moving, whatever, let me know. I appreciate that." He hesitated in the doorway. "Can I say something? And feel free to tell me to mind my own business. Go ahead. I never liked Adrian. He always struck me as the type who thought he was smarter than everyone else. I'm glad you're getting out." After he left, I sat at my desk, thinking about that. How many people had seen through Adrian? How many had noticed his arrogance, his self-centeredness, his disregard for others? And how many had stayed quiet because criticizing someone's spouse was taboo? I'd been so focused on maintaining the image of a perfect marriage that I'd ignored all the signs that it wasn't perfect at all. I dismissed my own concerns because I didn't want to be the woman whose marriage failed. I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating, thinking that was what love required. What a waste that had been. Around noon, Patricia called. The forensic accountants started their work this morning. They already found some interesting things. Like what? Like a series of cash withdrawals from your joint account, totaling about $40,000 over the past year. Adrian claimed they were for business expenses, but there's no corresponding documentation in his business accounts. So the money disappeared. Essentially, yes, we're going to trace it. But my guess is it went to Vanessa. Rent, gifts, travel, whatever he was spending on her. Can we prove that? If the money went into her accounts, yes. The accountants will cross-reference her financial records with the withdrawals. It'll take time, but we'll build the case. What about the business? Is he really at risk of losing it? That depends on what else we find. If he's been using business funds for personal expenses, which the evidence suggests, his investors could sue him. The board could force him out. At minimum, his reputation is going to take a serious hit. Good. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Isabella, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go this far? This isn't just about the divorce anymore. This could destroy his career. He destroyed our marriage. He humiliated me publicly. He stole from our joint accounts to fund his affair. Why should I protect his career? I'm not saying you should. I'm just making sure you understand the scope of what we're doing. I understand completely. And yes, I want to go this far. Okay then, we proceed. That afternoon, I received an email from Adrian's mother, Helen Whitmore. It was formal, cold. Exactly what I'd expected from a woman who'd never quite approved of me. Isabella, I'm writing to express my deep disappointment in your actions. Adrian made a mistake, yes, but your response has been vindictive and excessive. A wife should support her husband through difficult times, not destroy him publicly. I'm asking you to reconsider this divorce. Think about what you're throwing away. 10 years of marriage, a comfortable life, a man who loves you. Don't let your pride ruin everything you've built together. Please call me so we can discuss this rationally. Helen, I read it twice, feeling anger build with each word. A wife should support her husband? Even when that husband cheated, lied, and stole? Even when he humiliated her in front of everyone they knew? I wrote back, Helen, I appreciate your concern, but you're directing it at the wrong person. Your son destroyed this marriage through his choices. I'm simply refusing to pretend those choices don't have consequences. A husband should honor his wife, respect his marriage vows, and treat his partner with dignity. Adrian did none of those things. If you want someone to lecture about marriage, I suggest you start with him. I won't be calling. All communication regarding the divorce won't go through our lawyers. Isabella, I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I forwarded the email chain to Patricia with a note. Documentation of Adrian's family attempting to manipulate me into dropping the divorce. Perfect, Patricia replied. Keep everything. It all builds our case. Wednesday afternoon, I had a meeting with the forensic accountants Patricia had hired. They'd made significant progress in just 2 days. Mrs. Whitmore, the lead accountant, a woman named Carmen Torres began, "We found several concerning patterns in your husband's financial records. Tell me, first, the cash withdrawals we mentioned. We've traced them to an account in Vanessa Monroe's name. Your husband was depositing cash into her account approximately once a month, always in amounts just under $10,000 to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. So, he knew what he was doing was wrong. It suggests awareness, yes. Second, we found that Mr. Whitmore took out a second mortgage on your house 6 months ago without your knowledge or consent." I felt the blood drain from my face. How is that possible? I'm on the deed. He can't mortgage the house without my signature. Carmen looked uncomfortable. He forged your signature on the mortgage documents. We've compared it to your actual signature on other legal documents, and they don't match. That's fraud. Yes, it is, and it's potentially criminal. How much did he take out? $100,000. According to the mortgage documents, it was supposed to be for home renovations, but we can't find any evidence of renovations being done. Where did the money go? We're still tracing it, but preliminary evidence suggests it went into his business accounts, possibly to cover cash flow problems. I sat back, processing this. Adrian had forged my signature, had taken out a mortgage on our house without telling me, had lied on legal documents. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic fraud. There's more, Carmen continued. Mr. Whitmore's business is in worse shape than the public records suggest. He owes significant money to investors. Several vendors are threatening to sue for non-payment, and cash flow is critically low. The vow renewal ceremony you just had, that cost approximately $75,000, paid from your joint account. $75,000 for one party? The venue, the caterers, the musicians, the flowers, the photographer, it all added up. And Mrs. Whitmore, you should know, Miss Monroe helped plan the party. There are emails between her and the vendors, decisions about flowers and menu and music. She was essentially co-hosting your vow renewal ceremony. The humiliation of that hit me like a physical blow. Vanessa hadn't just attended the party. She'd helped plan it, had chosen the flowers I'd carried, the menu we'd served, possibly even the music we'd danced to. "I need a minute," I said, standing up and walking to the window. Behind me, I heard Carmen and Patricia conferring quietly, giving me space to process. Adrian had stolen from me, had forged my signature, had involved his mistress in planning our vow renewal ceremony. Each revelation was more devastating than the last. But underneath the pain, I felt something else. Vindication. Every piece of evidence was proving I'd been right to leave, right to protect myself, right to assume the worst and plan accordingly. "What happens now?" I asked, turning back to face them. "We complete the audit," Patricia said. "Document everything. Then we present it all to the judge. Adrian forging your signature on the mortgage documents, that's potentially criminal fraud. We can press charges if you want. Do I want to? That depends on what you're trying to achieve. Criminal charges would definitely hurt him, but they'd also make this whole process longer and messier. The divorce would become secondary to the criminal proceedings. I want him held accountable, but I also want this over with. I want to move on with my life." Then we use the threat of criminal charges as leverage. We tell his lawyer that if Adrian doesn't settle fairly and quickly, we'll file a police report for the forged signature. That should motivate him to cooperate. Do it. The meeting lasted another hour, going over financial details, timelines, evidence. By the time I left, I had a complete picture of Adrian's betrayals, not just the affair, but the systematic theft and fraud he'd committed to fund his lifestyle and his mistress. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, processing everything I'd learned. 10 years of marriage, and I'd never known who Adrian really was. Or maybe I had known, somewhere deep down, and I'd just chosen not to see it. My phone rang, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Isabella?" "It's Preston Blake, Adrian's attorney. All communication should go through my lawyer." I know, but I was hoping we could talk informally, off the record." "There is no off the record. Anything you say to me can and will be used in divorce proceedings. Fair enough. Then let me be direct. Your lawyer is threatening to file criminal charges for the mortgage fraud. That's going to destroy Adrian. Not just the divorce, his career, his business, everything. He should have thought about that before forging my signature. He made a mistake. Stop calling it a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Forging someone's signature on a $100,000 mortgage is fraud. It's deliberate. It's criminal. He was desperate. The business was struggling. He needed capital. Then he should have talked to me. We're married. We're supposed to be partners. Instead, he committed fraud and stole from me. If you file charges, you'll be dragged into it too. Criminal proceedings mean testimony, cross-examination, media attention. Is that really what you want? What I want is justice. If that means media attention, so be it. Preston sighed. What would it take for you to not file charges? What's your price? My price? There is no price. This isn't a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation. Come on, Isabella, you're a smart woman. You know how this works. Name your terms. I thought about it. What did I want? The house. But that was already going to happen. Money. But I'd get that in a divorce settlement. Adrian's business. But destroying that would hurt his employees, innocent people who didn't deserve to suffer for his choices. What I wanted was simpler than any of that. I want Adrian to admit what he did, publicly. A statement acknowledging the affair, the financial fraud, all of it. I want him to take responsibility instead of painting himself as the victim. He'll never agree to that. It would destroy his reputation. Then I file charges. His choice. Isabella, we're done here. Have Adrian call his criminal defense lawyer. He's going to need one. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Patricia called. Preston Blake just contacted me. Said you threatened to file charges unless Adrian makes a public confession. That's accurate. That's brilliant. He's panicking. He called it extortion, which is ridiculous, but it shows he's rattled. Good. Let him be rattled. Let him feel a fraction of what I felt standing on that stage while he introduced his mistress to everyone we know. I'm going to draft a formal settlement proposal. If Adrian agrees to our terms, fair division of assets, spousal support, and a public acknowledgement of his behavior, we won't file criminal charges. If he doesn't agree, we proceed with everything. How long will that take? I'll have it to his lawyer by tomorrow morning. Then it's up to Adrian. After we hung up, I poured another glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Adrian was panicking, realizing that his comfortable life, his carefully constructed image, his sense of control, all of it was slipping away, and I felt no guilt about that. No remorse. Just a quiet satisfaction that justice was finally catching up with him. My phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. You're ruining his life. Is that what you want? To destroy someone you supposedly loved? I typed back. I loved my husband. Adrian stopped being that person the moment he betrayed me. I'm not destroying him. I'm revealing who he really is. There's a difference. She didn't respond. I finished my wine and went inside, locking my balcony door behind me. Tomorrow, Patricia would send the settlement proposal. Adrian would have 72 hours to respond, and then we'd see if he was willing to face consequences or if his pride would force us into a long, ugly court battle. Either way, I was prepared. I had the evidence. I had the documentation. I had the moral high ground. Adrian had nothing but excuses and the ruins of a reputation he'd destroyed himself. The game was almost over, and I'd already won. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor to my office. Adrian's business partner, Marcus Flynn, showed up without an appointment and asked my receptionist if he could speak with me. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. Marcus and Adrian had founded their real estate development company together 8 years ago. I'd always liked Marcus. He was straightforward, honest, the practical counterweight to Adrian's flash and charisma, but I hadn't spoken to him since the Vow Renewal ceremony. Isabella, he said when I let him into my office. Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Marcus? To apologize, for not seeing what was happening, for not saying something when I should have. You knew about the affair? He looked uncomfortable. I suspected. About a year ago, I noticed things. Adrian leaving early for meetings that weren't on the calendar. Phone calls he'd take privately. Credit card receipts that didn't make sense. But I didn't want to get involved in your marriage. I told myself it was none of my business. You're right. It wasn't your business. But I should have said something anyway. Because what Adrian was doing, the affair, the financial impropriety, it wasn't just hurting you. It was hurting the company. He's been borrowing from business accounts to fund his lifestyle, taking investor money and using it for personal expenses. I'm trying to clean it up now, but the damage is significant. I leaned back in my chair. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that not everyone around Adrian was complicit. Some of us are just as angry as you are. And because I'm worried about what happens next. If you press criminal charges for the mortgage fraud, it could bring down the entire company. Our employees, our investors, innocent people would suffer. Are you asking me not to file charges? I'm asking you to consider all the collateral damage. Adrian deserves consequences. I'm not denying that. But there are 23 employees who work for our company. Good people with families and mortgages. If the company goes under because of criminal investigations and bad publicity, they lose their jobs. That's not my responsibility. No, it's not. But I know you, Isabella. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. I'm asking you to find a way to hold Adrian accountable without punishing people who had nothing to do with his choices. I thought about it. Marcus was right. I didn't want to hurt innocent people. But I also didn't want to protect Adrian from the consequences of his actions, just because other people might be affected. What are you proposing? Let me buy Adrian out of the company. I have investors lined up who'd back me. We remove Adrian completely. No role in operations, no decision-making authority, nothing. He keeps his ownership percentage, but has no active involvement. That way, the company survives. The employees keep their jobs. And Adrian loses the thing he cares about most, control. And in exchange, I'll testify about the financial impropriety if you need it. I'll provide documentation of every questionable transaction. I'll support your divorce case completely. But I'm asking you to not file criminal charges that would trigger a federal investigation into the company. It was clever. Adrian loved his business more than almost anything. Being bought out, losing control, watching Marcus run the company without him, that would hurt worse than criminal charges that he'd just blame on me. I need to talk to my lawyer. Of course. But Isabella? Thank you for considering it. After Marcus left, I called Patricia and explained the proposal. It's interesting, she said, and it might actually be better than criminal charges. If Adrian loses his business and his reputation, that's punishment enough, and we'd still have Marcus's testimony if we need leverage. You think I should agree? I think you should consider what you really want out of this divorce. Do you want Adrian in prison? Or do you want him to lose everything that matters to him while you walk away free and clear? I want justice. Then this might be justice. He loses his company, his reputation, his marriage, his sense of control. He's left with nothing but the consequences of his choices. That seems fair to me. Set up a meeting with Marcus and his lawyers. Let's see if we can make this work. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. In the meantime, Patricia sent Adrian the settlement proposal. I would get the house, half of all marital assets after debts were settled, 3 years of spousal support. And Adrian would make a public statement acknowledging the affair and taking responsibility for the end of our marriage. In exchange, I wouldn't file criminal charges for the forged mortgage. Adrian's response came Thursday night through Preston Blake. Absolutely not. My client will not make any public statement that could be used against him in future legal proceedings. He's willing to settle the financial aspects fairly, but he won't publicly humiliate himself. Patricia called me immediately. He's refusing. I'm not surprised. His ego won't let him admit wrongdoing. So we proceed with criminal charges? I thought about what Marcus had said, about the employees who'd lose their jobs, about collateral damage. No. Let's modify the proposal. Remove the public statement requirement, but add a non-disparagement clause. He can't say anything negative about me, publicly or privately. He can't paint himself as the victim or me as the villain. He has to stay silent. That might work. Let me redraft it. Friday morning, I met with Marcus, his lawyers, and Patricia. We spent 3 hours hammering out an agreement. Marcus would buy out Adrian's shares in the company at fair market value, which, given the company's current financial troubles, was significantly less than what they'd been worth a year ago. Adrian would retain passive ownership but no operational control. In exchange, I would pursue the divorce through civil proceedings only, without filing criminal charges for the forged mortgage. Adrian would settle the divorce according to Patricia's terms, including the non-disparagement clause. This works for me, Marcus said. I can have the buyout funds within 2 weeks. And Adrian will agree? He doesn't have a choice. The alternative is criminal charges, a federal investigation, and watching the company collapse. This way, at least he gets something out of his shares. By Friday afternoon, we had a draft agreement. Patricia sent it to Preston Blake with a 48-hour deadline for response. What happens if he refuses? I asked. Then we file charges Monday morning and let the chips fall where they may. But I don't think he'll refuse. His ego is fighting with his survival instinct, and survival usually wins. That weekend, I tried to focus on anything other than the divorce. I met Simone for brunch, went to a yoga class, started reading a novel I'd been meaning to get to for months. But my mind kept circling back to Monday, to whether Adrian would accept the terms or force us into a longer, uglier battle. Sunday evening, as I was making dinner in my apartment, my phone rang. Patricia. He agreed. I sat down heavily. He did? He signed the settlement agreement an hour ago. You get the house, your share of assets, spousal support, everything we asked for. He agrees to the non-disparagement clause. Marcus buys him out of the company. It's done. Just like that? Just like that. Preston called me and said Adrian realized he couldn't win, that fighting would only make things worse. So he's accepting the terms and moving on. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling oddly empty. I'd been preparing for battle, armoring myself for a long legal fight. And instead, it was just over. 10 years of marriage, 4 months of careful planning, 2 weeks of intense legal maneuvering, and now it was done. I called Simone. He settled. It's over. Oh my God, that's amazing. How do you feel? I don't know. Relieved? Numb? It's strange. I thought there'd be more fanfare. This is the fanfare. You won. You got everything you wanted. He's lost his wife, his business control, his reputation. That's a complete victory. Then why don't I feel victorious? Because revenge is weird like that. You think it'll make you feel powerful and satisfied, but really it just makes you feel tired. The satisfaction comes later, when you realize you're free. She was right. The satisfaction wasn't immediate. It would come gradually, as I rebuilt my life without Adrian, as I stopped checking over my shoulder, stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, stopped living in reaction to him. Monday morning, Patricia called with final details. The divorce will be finalized in 60 days. That's standard waiting period in our state. The house title will transfer to your name immediately. Adrian's required to move out by the end of the week. Where's he going? I don't know, and I don't care. But Isabella, you should know that Adrian tried to get one last concession. He wanted to keep the wedding photos, said they were important to him. What did you say? I said he should have thought about that before bringing his mistress to your vow renewal ceremony. The photos stay with you. I smiled. Patricia was worth every penny I was paying her. That afternoon, I drove to the house one last time. Adrian's car wasn't in the driveway. He'd already started moving out. The key still worked in the lock, but the house felt different. Empty. Like it had already stopped being home. I walked through the rooms slowly, remembering. The living room, where we'd hosted dinner parties. The kitchen, where I'd made breakfast every Sunday morning. The bedroom, where we'd slept side by side for 10 years. All of it felt like it had happened to someone else. The woman who'd lived in this house, who'd trusted Adrian, who'd believed in forever. She was gone. I was someone different now. In Adrian's office, I found evidence he'd been there recently. Papers scattered on his desk, filing cabinet drawers left open. He'd taken most of his personal items but left the furniture, per the settlement agreement. On his desk, I found a framed photo from our wedding day. We looked so young, so hopeful. I picked it up, studying our faces, trying to remember what I'd felt that day. Love, certainly. Hope. Excitement for the future we'd build together, but also naivety. I'd believed that love was enough. That if I was a good enough wife, supportive enough, understanding enough, the marriage would succeed. I knew better now. Marriage required more than love. It required honesty, respect, partnership. All the things Adrian had been incapable of giving. I left the photo on his desk. Let him keep that one. Let him remember what he'd thrown away. As I was leaving, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Isabella? It's Vanessa. I almost hung up, but something made me listen. What do you want? I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. You were right. I was delusional. Adrian's not who I thought he was. What happened? He moved in with me. After you filed for divorce, he needed a place to stay, so I offered. And within 3 days, I realized the mistake I'd made. He's controlling, demanding, critical. Everything has to be his way. He treats me like a servant, not a partner. Welcome to my world. I don't know what I saw in him. Or maybe I did know, and I just liked the idea of being with someone successful and powerful. But the reality of actually being with him, it's awful. Vanessa, why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know, you didn't lose anything worth keeping. Adrian's not a prize. He's not worth what you went through. You're better off without him. I know that. I've known it for months. I'm moving out. Going back to my parents' house until I figure out my next steps. I can't be with him. Can't even be in the same room as him. That's probably wise. Isabella, thank you. For what? For showing me who he really is. If you'd just accepted the affair, stayed quiet, I might have spent years thinking I'd won some great prize. But watching you fight back, protect yourself, refuse to be diminished, it showed me what strength actually looks like. And it made me realize I don't have that strength. Not yet. After we hung up, I sat in my car feeling something unexpected. Pity for Vanessa. She'd been so convinced she was winning, that she'd stolen Adrian from me, claimed some great prize. And now she was realizing what I'd known for months. Adrian wasn't a prize. He was a burden. I drove back to my apartment feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The divorce would be final in 60 days. The house was mine. My assets were protected. Adrian was out of my life completely, and I was free, really, truly free. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since filing for divorce. I looked at my calendar and started planning my future. Not my future with Adrian, not my future defined by the divorce, but my future as Isabella Martinez, a woman who'd survived betrayal and come out stronger. I'd wanted to travel before I married Adrian, but he'd always had reasons why we couldn't. His business needed him. He couldn't take time off. There'd be time later. Later had never come. Now I could go anywhere I wanted, do anything I wanted, be anyone I wanted. The possibilities were overwhelming in the best way. I started making a list. Places I wanted to visit, classes I wanted to take, hobbies I wanted to explore. Everything I'd put on hold to be Adrian's wife. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Heard the settlement went through. Proud of you, mija. Thanks, Mom. I'm proud of me too. And I was. Proud that I'd handled this with dignity. Proud that I'd protected myself financially and legally. Proud that I'd refused to be diminished or dismissed or manipulated. Adrian had tried to turn me into the villain of this story. The vindictive ex-wife, the woman who couldn't forgive, the gold digger who was only after his money. But I'd controlled the narrative. I'd been the one with evidence, with documentation, with the moral high ground. I'd been the one who'd acted strategically instead of emotionally. And in the end, I'd been the one who walked away whole. That was worth everything. The 60 days until my divorce was finalized passed surprisingly quickly. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion to senior director that I'd been passed over for twice during my marriage. Adrian had always discouraged me from taking on more responsibility, saying it would interfere with our life. Turned out, without Adrian to manage, I had plenty of time and energy for career advancement. I also started planning my first solo trip, 3 weeks in Italy, something I dreamed about since college. I booked flights, researched hotels, made lists of museums and restaurants and experiences I wanted to have. It felt indulgent and terrifying and absolutely necessary. Adrian moved out of Vanessa's apartment after 2 weeks, just as she'd predicted. According to Simone, who still had mutual friends keeping her informed, he'd moved into a luxury apartment downtown that cost more than he could afford post-settlement. He was trying to maintain the image of success even as his finances crumbled. I didn't care what Adrian did anymore. He was a problem I'd solved, the chapter I'd closed, a lesson I'd learned. His choices and their consequences were his to manage. Marcus kept me updated on the company situation, not because he had to, but because he wanted me to know Adrian's business reputation was finished. News of the buyout had spread through the industry, along with whispers about why it had happened. People were connecting dots. The sudden divorce, the financial irregularities, Adrian's removal from day-to-day operations. His name is toxic now, Marcus told me during a phone call. I had 3 potential clients specifically request that Adrian have no involvement in their projects. He's essentially unemployable in this market. That's unfortunate, I said, and I almost meant it. Almost. Is it though? He brought this on himself, and honestly the company's doing better without him. Turns out his vision was mostly just ego. We're profitable again, for the first time in 18 months. The day my divorce was finalized, I treated myself to an expensive dinner at the restaurant Adrian always claimed was too pretentious. I ordered the tasting menu, drank excellent wine, and sat alone at a table for one without feeling lonely. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes, noticed I was celebrating something. "Special occasion?" he asked while pouring my wine. "My divorce was finalized today. Congratulations or condolences?" "Definitely congratulations," he smiled. "Then I'll make sure your dessert is extra special." When the check came, it was significantly less than I'd expected. The waiter had comped my wine. "Consider it a gift," he said. "From one person who's been through divorce to another, it gets better from here." "It's already better," I told him. "This is the better part." Walking back to my car, I passed a newsstand and saw a magazine with a cover story about messy celebrity divorces. I thought about how my divorce could have been messy, could have been public and ugly and dragged out for years, but it hadn't been, because I'd stayed in control. I'd documented everything, planned carefully, acted strategically. I'd made it impossible for Adrian to paint me as the villain or claim I'd blindsided him. The divorce wasn't messy, it was clean, precise, exactly what needed to happen. 2 weeks later, I left for Italy. The flight was long, but I didn't mind. I read, watched movies, slept without dreaming. When we landed in Rome, I felt like I was arriving somewhere I'd always been meant to go. The next 3 weeks were transformative. I walked through ancient ruins, ate pasta in tiny restaurants, drank wine in piazzas as the sun set. I visited museums, practiced my terrible Italian, got lost in winding streets, and found my way back. I met other travelers, shared meals and stories, laughed more than I had in years. Some nights, I went out with new friends. Other nights, I stayed in my hotel room, content with my own company. In Florence, I met a man named Giovanni who taught art history at the university. We had coffee together, then dinner, then spent an entire day wandering through the Uffizi Gallery while he explained the paintings in a way that made them come alive. "You have sadness in your eyes," he said as we looked at a Caravaggio, "but also strength. What happened to you? A divorce, a betrayal, the usual story. Ah, and now you are free. Now I'm free. Freedom looks good on you." We kissed in front of the Ponte Vecchio as the sun set. It was sweet and uncomplicated, the kiss of 2 people who knew they wouldn't see each other again, but wanted this moment anyway. Will you come back to Italy? Giovanni asked. Probably. I have a lot more to see. When you do, call me. I will show you Venice. It is even more beautiful than Florence. I flew home with a camera full of photos and a journal full of thoughts. Italy had been exactly what I needed. Distance from my old life, space to figure out who I was now, proof that I could be happy alone. Back in my apartment, sorting through mail and unpacking, I found an envelope from Patricia. Inside was the final divorce decree and a note. Isabella, congratulations. You handled this entire process with remarkable grace and intelligence. Many of my clients let emotion drive their decisions, but you stayed focused on protection and justice. I hope you never need my services again, but if you do, I'll be here. Patricia. I filed the divorce decree in a folder marked Finished Business and put it at the back of my filing cabinet. I didn't need to look at it regularly. Didn't need to rehash what had happened. It was done. My phone rang. Simone, you're back. How was Italy? Perfect. Exactly what I needed. I'm so glad. Listen, I'm having a dinner party next weekend. Small group, mostly people you know. You should come. Will I be the only single person there? Does it matter? No, I realized. It doesn't. At Simone's dinner party, I met a man named Daniel who worked in architecture. He was 42, recently divorced himself, with 2 teenagers he shared custody of. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. Travel, work, our respective divorces, what we'd learned about ourselves. My ex-wife cheated, Daniel said. It destroyed me for a while. Made me question everything I thought I knew about love and trust. I understand that feeling. But then I realized her betrayal wasn't actually about me. It was about her own issues, her own needs, her own choices. I didn't cause it by being a bad husband. She caused it by being someone who prioritized her wants over our vows. That's very enlightened. Took me 2 years of therapy to get there, he admitted, but it was worth it. Now I can actually think about dating again without being terrified. Are you? Thinking about dating? Maybe, if I met the right person. He looked at me carefully. Would you be interested in coffee sometime? Just coffee, no pressure. I'd like that. We exchanged numbers. He didn't call immediately, which I appreciated. No games, no artificial waiting periods, just a text 3 days later. How's Thursday for that coffee? Thursday we met at a cafe near my office. We talked for 2 hours. Way past the point where coffee was a reasonable excuse. He was easy to talk to, funny and thoughtful, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. I should tell you, I said as we were leaving, I'm not looking for anything serious right now. I'm still figuring out who I am post-divorce. That's fair. I'm not in a rush either. But I'd like to see you again. Even if it's just as friends who occasionally have coffee. I'd like that too. Over the next few months, Daniel and I saw each other regularly. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes dinner, sometimes just walks through the park, talking about our days. It was easy and comfortable and refreshingly honest. I like that you don't play games, Daniel said one evening as we walked along the river. You say what you mean. You're direct about what you want and don't want. My ex-husband taught me that games are exhausting. I'd rather just be honest. Your ex-husband sounds like an idiot. He was. But he taught me valuable lessons about what I won't tolerate. Like what? Lies, manipulation, being taken for granted, expecting me to make myself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Those are good boundaries. They are, and they're non-negotiable now. 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I ran into Adrian at a charity gala I'd been invited to through work. I almost didn't go, knowing he might be there, but I refused to let him dictate my social life anymore. He looked older, tired. The swagger he'd always carried was diminished. He was with a date, not Vanessa, someone else, another young woman who looked impressed by his attempts at charm. Our eyes met across the room. I could have looked away, pretended not to see him. Instead, I raised my champagne glass slightly in acknowledgement, then turned back to my conversation with Daniel. A few minutes later, Adrian approached. Isabella, you look well. Thank you. I am well. I wanted to say, He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I wanted to apologize. For everything. You deserved better. Yes, I did. I'd had time to think about what happened, about my choices, and you were right. I was selfish and cruel. I took you for granted. Adrian, I appreciate the apology, but I don't need it. I've moved on. I can see that. He glanced at Daniel, who was standing close enough to be supportive, but far enough to give us space. Is he? That's none of your business anymore. Right, of course. Well, I hope you're happy. Really. You deserve happiness. I am happy. Happier than I've been in years. He nodded, started to walk away, then turned back. The house? You're still living there? No. I sold it. Bought a condo downtown. Fresh start. Ah, that makes sense. It had too many memories. Exactly. After he left, Daniel raised an eyebrow. That was your ex? That was my ex. He seems diminished. He is. He lost everything that mattered to him. His business, his reputation, his sense of control. That's what happens when you build your identity on things outside yourself. And you? What did you build your identity on? I'm still figuring that out, but whatever it is, it's mine. Not borrowed from someone else, not dependent on a relationship or a marriage or someone else's opinion of me. Just mine. That's powerful. It's freedom. Later that night, after the gala ended, Daniel and I stood outside my building. We'd been dating, actually dating now, not just having coffee, for 3 months. It was slow and careful, both of us healing from our respective divorces, both of us learning to trust again. Can I come up? Daniel asked. Not tonight, but soon. I can wait. I know. That's why I'm asking you to. He kissed me goodnight, gentle and patient, and I watched him walk to his car before going inside. In my condo, my space, my sanctuary, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Adrian was going home alone or with his date, trying to recapture something he'd lost when he betrayed me. But I wasn't thinking about Adrian. I was thinking about how far I'd come. From the woman who'd stood on that stage, smiling through humiliation, to the woman I was now, confident, independent, absolutely clear about what she deserved. Adrian had thought bringing his mistress to our vow renewal ceremony would prove something, that he could have it all, that I'd accept anything. Instead, it had proven that I was stronger than he'd imagined, that underestimating me was the biggest mistake he'd ever made, that consequences were real and unavoidable. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Saw you at the gala on social media. You looked radiant. So proud of you. Thanks, Mom. I'm proud of me too. And I was. Not because I'd destroyed Adrian, though I had in a way, but because I'd refused to be destroyed myself. Because I'd protected what was mine. Because I'd demanded justice and gotten it. Because I'd renewed my bank account instead of my vows, and that had been exactly the right choice. The revenge I'd planned 4 months ago, standing in that ballroom with Adrian and Vanessa, had been perfect. Not violent, not illegal, but absolutely devastating in all the ways that mattered. Adrian had lost his business, his reputation, his sense of control. He'd lost the woman he'd taken for granted and the life he'd built on lies. And I'd gained everything. My independence, my self-respect, my future. The freedom to be whoever I wanted to be, without someone else's needs or demands or betrayals shaping me. That was the best revenge of all. Not destruction, but liberation. Not making him suffer, but refusing to suffer myself. Not bringing him down, but lifting myself up so high he couldn't touch me anymore. I finished my wine and went inside, leaving the balcony door open so the night air could flow through my home. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my own bed, in my own condo, living my own life. I'd go to my job where I was respected and valued. I'd have dinner with Daniel and talk about our days. I'd plan another trip, maybe to Greece this time. I'd live. Really, truly live. Without fear, without compromise, without making myself smaller for someone else's ego. That was what Adrian had given me, inadvertently. By betraying me, he'd freed me. By bringing his mistress to our vow renewal ceremony, He'd shown me exactly who he was and given me permission to walk away without guilt. By underestimating me, he'd allowed me to prepare the perfect revenge, a life so good, so full, so completely mine that his betrayal became irrelevant. I'd renewed my bank account instead of my vows, and I'd never been richer. A year after my divorce was finalized, I woke up in my condo to sunlight streaming through windows I'd chosen, in a bed I'd bought, surrounded by furniture that reflected my taste rather than compromises with someone else's preferences. The morning was quiet, peaceful, mine. Daniel had stayed over, a fairly regular occurrence now, though we still maintained separate homes. We'd learned from our respective marriages that rushing into cohabitation was a mistake. We were taking things slow, building something solid. "Morning," he said, emerging from the bathroom. "Coffee? Please." We'd developed routines together, but they were flexible, comfortable. If I wanted to spend a Saturday alone, Daniel understood. If he needed to focus on his kids for a weekend, I didn't take it personally. We'd both learned that healthy relationships required space as well as togetherness. "What's on your agenda today?" I asked as we sat on the balcony with our coffee. "Hannah has a soccer game at 10. Want to come?" I'd met Daniel's daughters, Hannah and Chloe, several months ago. We'd taken it slowly there too. No pressure, no expectations, just casual meetings that gradually built into something more comfortable. They were good kids, still processing their parents' divorce but resilient. I'd love to, but after that, I need to work on my presentation. I'd been invited to speak at a conference for divorced professionals, sharing my experience of rebuilding after a high-profile divorce. Patricia had suggested it, thinking my story might help others. Still nervous about it? A little. It's one thing to tell friends about the divorce. It's another to stand in front of 100 strangers and talk about the worst period of my life. You'll be great, and honestly, if you help even one person feel less alone, it's worth it. At Hannah's soccer game, I sat with Daniel and Chloe in the stands, cheering when Hannah scored a goal. Other parents glanced at me, curiously. Daniel's new girlfriend, still unfamiliar. But no one was hostile. This wasn't the social circle I'd shared with Adrian, where every gathering felt like a performance. After the game, Hannah ran over, sweaty and triumphant. "Did you see my goal?" "I did. It was amazing." "Dad says you're giving a speech about divorce. That's kind of weird." "Hannah," Daniel warned. "No, it's okay," I said. "It is kind of weird. But sometimes talking about hard things makes them easier for other people, I guess." "Are you going to talk about my dad's divorce?" "No, just mine. Everyone's divorce is different. Mon says divorce is for people who give up too easily." Daniel's expression tightened. His ex-wife had been difficult about the divorce, painting herself as the victim despite being the one who cheated. It was a familiar pattern. "Sometimes divorce is about refusing to give up on yourself," I said carefully. "About choosing to be happy even when a relationship isn't working." Hannah thought about that. "I like that better than Mom's version." That afternoon, I worked on my presentation. It was surprisingly difficult to condense 4 months of planning, years of marriage, and the aftermath of betrayal into a 40-minute talk. What details mattered? What would resonate with people going through their own divorces? I decided to focus on the practical aspects, recognizing red flags, documenting evidence, protecting assets, maintaining composure. The emotional parts would come through naturally, but the strategic elements were what had saved me. My phone rang. "Simone, quick question. Are you free for lunch next Tuesday? There's someone I want you to meet." "Who?" "Her name is Olivia. She's going through a divorce. Her husband brought his girlfriend to their daughter's birthday party." I closed my eyes. Oh no. "Yeah, and she's falling apart, blaming herself, thinking she should have tried harder, letting him control the narrative. I thought maybe you could talk to her, share how you handled it." "I'm not a divorce coach, Simone." "No, but you're someone who survived something similar and came out stronger. She needs to see that it's possible. Send me her number. I'll reach out." That evening, I called Olivia. She answered on the first ring, her voice shaky. "Simone said you might call. Thank you so much for reaching out. She told me a little about your situation. I'm sorry you're going through this. I just don't understand what I did wrong. I was a good wife. I supported his career, took care of our daughter, kept our home running. And he still cheated, still chose someone else. Olivia, listen to me carefully. You didn't do anything wrong. His choice to cheat was about him, not you. It wasn't because you weren't good enough. It was because he's the kind of person who cheats. But maybe if I'd been more attentive, more exciting. No, stop that thinking right now. You could have been perfect and he still would have cheated. Because cheating is a character flaw in the cheater, not a failure in the spouse. She was quiet for a moment. Then, how did you get past it? The self-blame, the anger, all of it. I focused on what I could control. I couldn't control Adrian's choices, but I could control my response. I documented everything, protected my assets, built a case, and then I walked away with my head high. Simone said you took him for everything. I took what was mine. What I'd earned and deserved. And yes, I made sure he faced consequences for his choices, but I wasn't vindictive. I was strategic. I want to be strategic. Right now, I'm just a mess. That's okay. You're allowed to be a mess for a little while. But then you need to get angry. Channel that anger into protecting yourself. Document everything. Hire a good lawyer, and don't let guilt make you accept less than you deserve. My husband says I'm overreacting, that if I loved him, I'd forgive him and move on. Of course he does, because if you forgive him, he gets to have both his wife and his girlfriend without consequences. Don't let him manipulate you, Olivia. You deserve better than that. We talked for over an hour. I shared specific strategies, how to document evidence, what financial records to gather, how to choose a lawyer, how to stay composed when you wanted to scream. By the time we hung up, Olivia sounded stronger, more determined. Thank you, she said. I feel like I can actually do this now. You can. And when it's done, you'll be amazed at how strong you really are. The following week, I gave my presentation at the Divorced Professionals Conference. I spoke to a room of about 80 people, men and women of various ages, all of them processing the end of marriages, all of them trying to figure out how to move forward. I told them about the vow renewal ceremony, about standing on stage with Adrian and Vanessa, about maintaining composure while plotting my exit. I talked about the importance of documentation, of protecting assets, of staying strategic instead of emotional. The best revenge, I said, isn't destroying your ex. It's building a life so good that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. It's becoming so strong, so independent, so genuinely happy that you realize they didn't take anything from you that mattered. Because what matters, your dignity, your self-respect, your future, those things were always yours. They could never take them. Afterward, people lined up to talk to me. They shared their own stories, asked for advice, thanked me for being honest about the difficulty of it all. One woman, probably in her 60s, grabbed my hand. My husband left me after 40 years of marriage. For his secretary. I thought my life was over. But listening to you, I realize it's just beginning. It is, I assured her. The life you build for yourself will be better than anything you had before, because it'll be yours. That evening, Daniel took me to dinner to celebrate. You were incredible today, he said, so composed and articulate. Those people needed to hear what you said. I needed to say it too, to remind myself how far I've come. Do you ever regret it? The divorce, the way you handled it? Never. Not even for a second. Adrian gave me no choice. And the way I handled it, strategically, carefully, with dignity, that's something I'm actually proud of. You should be. What about you? Do you regret your divorce? The divorce? No. I regret the marriage lasting as long as it did. I should have left sooner. But I stayed for the kids, trying to make it work. In retrospect, I think the kids would have been better off with 2 happy divorced parents than 2 miserable married ones, probably. But you can't change the past. You can only learn from it. That's very wise. I had a good teacher. Painful, but good. 2 years after my divorce, I was promoted to vice president of my firm. The position came with a significant raise, a corner office, and the respect I'd been working toward for years. During my marriage, Adrian had subtly discouraged my career ambitions, suggesting I didn't need to work so hard, that we had enough money. Now I understood it had been about control. If I succeeded too much professionally, I'd be less dependent on him. I celebrated the promotion by taking myself on a solo trip to Japan. Daniel understood. I needed to prove to myself that I could travel alone, be alone, enjoy my own company without feeling incomplete. In Kyoto, I visited temples and gardens, ate incredible food, walked miles through ancient neighborhoods. I journaled every evening, processing not just the trip, but everything that had brought me to this point. 2 years ago, I wrote, I was standing on a stage, smiling while my husband introduced his mistress to our friends and family. I felt humiliated, betrayed, powerless. Now I'm in Japan, vice president of a successful firm, genuinely happy. The transformation is remarkable. I thought about Adrian sometimes, but without anger. Curiosity, maybe. I'd heard through Marcus that he'd struggled to find work, that his reputation in the industry was permanently damaged. He'd moved to a different city, trying to rebuild somewhere that didn't know his story. I didn't wish him ill, but I didn't wish him well either. He was simply irrelevant to my life now. What I wished for was that he'd learned something. That destroying our marriage and losing everything had taught him to treat people better. But I suspected it hadn't. People like Adrian rarely learned those lessons. When I returned from Japan, Daniel met me at the airport with flowers. I missed you, he said, kissing me. I missed you too, but I needed that trip. I know. How was it? Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Good. Because I need to ask you something. My heart jumped. Okay. Not that, he said, laughing at my expression. Not yet, anyway. But I wanted to know if you'd be comfortable with me introducing you to my parents. They're coming to visit next month, and I'd like them to meet you. I'd like that. They know about my divorce, about how messy it was, and they're protective. They might ask you some tough questions. I can handle tough questions. I've had practice. Meeting Daniel's parents was surprisingly easy. His mother, Eleanor, was warm and welcoming. His father, James, was more reserved, but I could tell he was protective of his son. Daniel's told us about your divorce, Eleanor said over lunch. That must have been very difficult. It was, but it was also necessary. He said your ex-husband brought his mistress to your vow renewal ceremony, James said. That takes a special kind of arrogance. It did. But it also showed me exactly who he was, gave me permission to stop trying to make it work. How long did it take you to recover? Eleanor asked. I'm still recovering, in some ways. But the anger and pain, those faded pretty quickly once I focused on building my own life instead of dwelling on what he'd done. That's very mature, James said. A lot of people stay stuck in anger. Anger is exhausting. I had better things to do with my energy. Later, as we were leaving, Eleanor hugged me. I'm glad Daniel found you. He deserves someone strong. He's pretty strong himself. He is. But his ex-wife broke something in him. You're helping him heal. We're helping each other heal. That's what makes it work. 3 years after my divorce, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa. Isabella, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to reach out because I owe you an apology. A real one, not the half-hearted one I gave you before. I spent the past 3 years in therapy, working through why I made the choices I did, why I thought it was okay to sleep with a married man, why I convinced myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. The truth is I was selfish and delusional. I wanted what you had, the successful husband, the comfortable life, the respect that came with being Adrian's partner. But I wanted it without earning it. I thought I could just take it. What I didn't understand then, but I understand now, is that you didn't have any of those things because of Adrian. You had them because of who you are, your strength, your intelligence, your integrity. Adrian was just there, benefiting from your light. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, the harm I caused, and I'm genuinely sorry. I hope you're happy. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Vanessa, I read the email 3 times. trying to decide how I felt about it. Anger? No, that was long gone. Satisfaction that she finally understood? A little. Mostly I just felt closure. I wrote back, "Vanessa, thank you for the apology. I accept it, not because I needed it, but because it sounds like you needed to give it. I hope you've learned from what happened. I hope you've become someone who wouldn't make those choices again. That's all any of us can do. Learn and grow and try to be better. I am happy, very happy. I hope you find that happiness too. Isabella." After I sent it, I told Daniel about the email. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Good, actually. Like I can finally close that chapter completely. No loose ends, no unfinished business. Just done. That's healthy. I learned from the best," I said, kissing him. "You've taught me a lot about moving forward without dragging the past along. You've taught me things too. About protecting yourself while still being open to love. About boundaries and self-respect. We're a good team. We are. 4 years after my divorce, Daniel and I got married. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, held in a garden rather than a ballroom. No stage, no performance. Just two people making promises to each other. My vows were simple. I promise to be honest with you, even when it's hard. To respect your boundaries and expect you to respect mine. To choose you every day, not because I need you, but because I want you. To build a partnership based on equality, not dependence. And to never let love become an excuse for accepting less than I deserve. Daniel's were equally direct. I promise to see you as you are, not as I want you to be. To support your dreams without trying to control them. To be worthy of your trust. To stay when things get difficult, and to communicate instead of shutting down. And to remember that love is an action, not just a feeling. We didn't renew our vows years later. We didn't need to. We lived then every day. At the reception, my mother pulled me aside. "You look so happy, mija." "I am, Mom. Happier than I ever imagined I could be. I worried about you after Adrian. Worried you'd close yourself off, never trust again. I almost did. But then I realized closing myself off would be letting him win. He'd taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let him take my capacity for love too. You're so strong. I learned from you. You survived Dad leaving, built a whole new life, found happiness again. You showed me it was possible." Later, Daniel and I danced to a song we'd chosen together. Nothing too meaningful, just something we both liked. Around us, our friends and families celebrated. Hannah and Chloe were there, serving as bridesmaids, finally comfortable with their father remarrying. My own friends from work, from my life after Adrian, surrounded us with genuine joy. This was what a wedding should be, what a marriage should be. Partnership, honesty, mutual respect. Not performance or control, or one person diminishing themselves for the other. "Happy?" Daniel asked as we danced. "Incredibly. No regrets?" "Not a single one," and I meant it. I didn't regret my first marriage, even though it had ended in betrayal. It had taught me essential lessons about what I wanted and what I wouldn't tolerate. It had forced me to become stronger, more self-aware, more protective of my own worth. Adrian had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd refined me, burned away everything that was weak or uncertain or willing to accept crumbs. What remained was someone unbreakable, someone who knew her value and demanded it be recognized. Someone who could love deeply while maintaining boundaries. Someone who understood that self-respect was non-negotiable. That night, in the hotel room where Daniel and I would stay before flying to Greece for our honeymoon, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I saw a woman who'd survived betrayal and emerged victorious. Who'd renewed her bank account instead of her vows, and found that money bought freedom. Who'd learned that the best revenge was happiness, independence, a life well lived. I saw myself, finally, completely, without compromise. And I smiled. 5 years after my divorce from Adrian, I sat in my office at the firm, now as executive vice president, and received an email that made me pause. Miss Martinez, my name is Timothy Chen. You don't know me, but my wife is divorcing me. She's been having an affair with her boss, and she's trying to take everything. Our house, our savings, custody of our kids. I'm drowning. A friend told me about your story, about how you handled your own divorce with dignity and strategy. I know this is unusual, but would you be willing to talk to me? I need advice from someone who's been through this and survived. Timothy, I almost deleted it. I wasn't in the business of counseling strangers through their divorces, but something about the desperation in his words reminded me of myself 5 years ago, standing on that stage, feeling powerless while Adrian humiliated me. I called the number he'd included. Timothy, this is Isabella Martinez. I got your email. Oh God, thank you for calling. I didn't think you would. Tell me what's happening. He told me everything. His wife's affair, her attempts to paint him as an unfit parent, her manipulation of their assets. It was a familiar story, just with the genders reversed. What should I do? He asked when he finished. First, document everything. Every conversation, every text, every interaction with your kids. Create a record that can't be disputed. Isn't that paranoid? It's protective. Your wife is already building a narrative against you. You need to build your own narrative based on facts. Second, hire the best lawyer you can afford. Don't cheap out thinking you can handle it yourself. I don't have much money. She controlled our finances. Borrow from family if you have to. Sell things. Do whatever it takes. A good lawyer is the difference between losing everything and protecting what's yours. And third, stay calm. Don't let emotion drive your decisions. Your wife is going to try to provoke you, make you look unstable or angry. Don't give her that satisfaction. Be strategic, not emotional. How did you stay calm? When your husband was humiliating you? I focused on the end game. I knew that letting him see me break would give him power. So I played the role he expected, the understanding wife, while secretly protecting myself. By the time he realized I'd been planning my exit, it was too late for him to stop it. That's brilliant. It's survival. And you're going to survive this too, Timothy. It's going to be hard. There will be days you want to give up, but you push through, and on the other side is freedom. We talked for another hour. I gave him Patricia's contact information, suggested strategies for documenting his wife's affair, explained how to protect his assets. By the time we hung up, he sounded stronger, more determined. Thank you, he said. You have no idea how much this helped. I do know, because someone helped me once too. Now I'm paying it forward. After we hung up, I sat at my desk thinking about the ripple effects of Adrian's betrayal. How his actions had changed me, hardened me, taught me lessons I was now passing on to others. How his attempt to destroy me had actually created someone stronger, someone capable of helping others survive similar betrayals. That evening, I told Daniel about the call. You're becoming the divorced people's fairy godmother, he joked. More like their tactical advisor. Do you think you'll keep doing this? Helping people through divorces? Maybe. Not as a full-time thing, but when people reach out, I think I should help. Nobody should feel as alone as I felt standing on that stage. You weren't alone, though. You had your anger, your pride, your determination. Those kept you company. True, but it would have been nice to know someone else had survived it. That there was a path through the darkness. Now you are that for other people. That's powerful. 6 months later, I started getting emails from people all over the country. Somehow my story had spread, probably through social media, probably through people like Timothy sharing it with others in similar situations. People reached out asking for advice, for hope, for proof that survival was possible. I couldn't respond to everyone, but I tried. I offered what wisdom I had, what strategies had worked for me, what mistakes to avoid. Some people took my advice, others didn't, but they all seemed to need the same thing: permission to be angry, to protect themselves, to demand more than they'd been accepting. One woman, going through a particularly ugly divorce, wrote to thank me. Your story gave me permission to stop being nice, to stop protecting his feelings at the expense of my own. Thank you for showing me that self-respect isn't selfishness. That's exactly right, I wrote back. Self-respect is the opposite of selfishness. It's acknowledging that you matter, that your needs and feelings and boundaries are valid. Don't ever apologize for that. 7 years after my divorce, Daniel and I celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. We took a trip to Spain, ate incredible food, explored ancient cities, made love in hotel rooms with views of the Mediterranean. I need to tell you something, Daniel said one evening as we sat on a beach, watching the sunset. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. I want to adopt your name. Become Daniel Martinez instead of Daniel Foster. I stared at him. You want to take my name? I do. Foster is tied to my ex-wife, to that part of my life. Martinez is tied to you, to the life we're building together. It feels right. Your daughters are fine with it. I already asked. They understand that it's about moving forward, not erasing the past. I felt tears building. That's incredibly meaningful. You're incredibly meaningful. You taught me that it's possible to love again after betrayal, to trust again after being hurt. I want to honor that by taking your name, by fully committing to this life we've built. Then yes, absolutely yes. 8 years after my divorce, I published a book. Not a memoir exactly, but a guide for people going through high-conflict divorces. It was called Strategic Survival: Protecting Yourself When Marriage Ends Badly. The book combined practical advice with personal stories, my own and those of people I'd counseled over the years. It covered everything from documentation strategies to emotional survival to rebuilding afterward. Patricia wrote the foreword. Isabella Martinez understands something most people don't, that divorce is both emotional and strategic. You need both your heart and your head to survive it. This book shows you how. The book did well, better than I'd expected. I did interviews, appeared on podcasts, spoke at conferences. People resonated with the message. You can survive betrayal. You can protect yourself. You can build something better on the other side. At one book signing, a woman approached with tears in her eyes. Your book saved my marriage. Saved your marriage? The book is about divorce. I know. But reading it made me realize my husband and I were heading for disaster. We were taking each other for granted, keeping secrets, building resentments. Your book was a wake-up call. We went to counseling, started being honest with each other. We built our foundation. We're actually happy now. That's wonderful. The best outcome isn't always divorce. Sometimes it's a marriage that gets honest before it's too late. Thank you for writing this, for showing people that relationships require work and honesty. You're welcome. 9 years after my divorce, I was invited back to the Vow Renewal venue, the hotel ballroom where Adrian had introduced Anessa to everyone we knew. They were hosting a conference on healthy relationships, and they wanted me to speak about survival and rebuilding. I almost said no. The memories of that night were still sharp, even after all these years. But something made me accept. Standing in that ballroom again, on that same stage where I'd hidden my pain behind a smile, felt surreal. But I wasn't the same woman who'd stood here 9 years ago. That woman had been scared, humiliated, uncertain of her future. This woman was powerful, confident, clear about who she was and what she deserved. 9 years ago, I stood on this exact stage and watched my husband introduce his mistress to everyone we knew. It was one of the worst moments of my life. But it was also the moment I decided to stop being a victim and start being a strategist. I told them the story, all of it. The betrayal, the planning, the divorce, the aftermath. I didn't spare myself or Adrian. I told the truth. People ask me if I regret how I handled it, I said. If I think I was too harsh, too calculating. The answer is no. I protected myself using every legal tool available. I demanded consequences for behavior that deserved consequences. And I walked away with my dignity intact. That's not revenge. That's justice. And there's nothing wrong with demanding justice when someone has wronged you. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, people lined up to talk to me. They shared their own stories of betrayal and survival, of leaving and rebuilding, of learning to trust again. One older man, probably in his 70s, said, "I stayed in a marriage where my wife cheated for 30 years. I wish I'd had your courage to leave." "It's never too late," I told him. "As long as you're alive, you can change your life. I'm divorced now, 5 years free. Just wanted you to know that your story helped me finally do what I should have done decades ago." That evening, Daniel picked me up from the hotel. As we drove away, I looked back at the ballroom through the rearview mirror. "Closure?" Daniel asked. "Closure. That place doesn't have power over me anymore. It's just a room. You're amazing. You know that? I'm just someone who refused to stay broken. That's what makes you amazing." 10 years after my divorce, on the anniversary of that vow renewal ceremony, I did something I'd been planning for a while. I donated a significant portion of the settlement money I'd received from Adrian to a nonprofit that helped women escape abusive or manipulative relationships. The organization provided legal assistance, financial planning, safe housing, everything someone needed to leave and rebuild. It was called New Foundations, and their work was remarkable. At the donation ceremony, the director thanked me publicly. "This gift will help dozens of women leave situations where they're being hurt or controlled. It will fund lawyers, accountants, therapists, everything they need to start over." "That's exactly why I wanted to give it," I said. "No one should have to navigate divorce alone, especially when they're dealing with manipulation or abuse. If Adrian's money can help even one person escape and rebuild, it's worth it." After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She looked familiar, though I couldn't place her at first. "Mrs. Martinez? I'm Emily. My mother is Olivia. You talked to her years ago when she was going through her divorce." I remembered. Olivia, whose husband had brought his girlfriend to their daughter's birthday party. One of the first people I'd counseled. "How is your mother?" "She's incredible. She got through the divorce, rebuilt her life, even went back to school. She's a family therapist now, helping other people navigate difficult relationships. She says you saved her life." I just gave her permission to save herself. "Well, however you want to phrase it, you changed our lives. Both of us. She's happy now. Really happy. And so am I. I'm so glad. She wanted me to give you this." Emily handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Olivia. "Isabella, I don't know if you remember our conversation years ago, but I think about it all the time. You were a stranger who took time to talk me off a ledge when I was drowning. You taught me that self-respect isn't selfish, that protecting myself wasn't the same as being vindictive, that I deserved better than what I was accepting. I got through my divorce. It was hard, but I survived. And then I thrived. I'm remarried now to someone who treats me with genuine respect. My daughter is happy. My career is fulfilling. My life is mine. Thank you for showing me that survival was possible, that there was light on the other side of betrayal. You literally changed my life. With gratitude, Olivia." I read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions I couldn't quite name. This was what it had all been for. Not just my own survival, but creating a path for others to follow. That night, I sat with Daniel on our couch, his arm around me, telling him about Emily and Olivia. "You've helped so many people," he said. "That's a real legacy." The legacy I wanted was just surviving. Everything else has been a bonus. No, this is who you were always meant to be. Strong enough to survive, generous enough to help others do the same. We don't know who we are until we're tested. Adrian tested me, and I passed, with flying colors. 11 years after my divorce, I woke up on a regular Tuesday morning in the home I shared with Daniel. I made coffee, checked my email, prepared for a normal day at work. Then I saw it, an email from Adrian. I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity won out. "Isabella, I know I have no right to contact you, and I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry for everything I did to you. I've spent the past decade trying to rebuild my life and coming to terms with how badly I destroyed our marriage. I was selfish, cruel, narcissistic. I took you for granted and treated you terribly. You were right about everything. About Vanessa, about the financial fraud, about me thinking I could have it all without consequences. And you were right to leave, to protect yourself, to demand justice. I'm not the same person I was back then. Therapy, failure, loneliness, they've all taught me things I should have known all along. About respect, about honesty, about treating people well. I'm writing because I heard about your book, about the work you're doing helping people through divorces. It's good work, important work, and it makes me glad that something positive came from the terrible things I did. I hope you're happy. You deserve happiness. You deserved it back then, and you deserve it now. I'm sorry. For all of it. Adrian, I read the email twice. Felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering hurt. Just a mild acknowledgement that he'd written words he should have said years ago. I wrote back, Adrian, thank you for the apology. I accept it. I am happy. Very happy. I've built a life I love, with people who treat me well. Your betrayal was the catalyst for that transformation. So in a strange way, I'm grateful for it. I hope you've learned the lessons you needed to learn. I hope you're treating people better now. That's all any of us can do, learn and grow. Good luck with your life. Isabella. After I sent it, I told Daniel about the email. How do you feel? He asked. Indifferent. He apologized. I accepted. We're done. There's nothing left between us. No anger, no connection, no unfinished business. Just two people who used to be married and aren't anymore. That's healthy. It's closure. Real closure. Not forced or manufactured. Just complete. That evening, I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset, thinking about the past 11 years. About the woman I'd been on that stage, hiding pain behind a smile. About the journey from there to here. About everything I'd learned about myself, about relationships, about what I deserved. Adrian had brought his mistress to our vow renewal ceremony. He'd humiliated me publicly, thinking I'd accept it, thinking I had no choice. I'd renewed my bank account instead, protected my assets, built a case, walked away with dignity and justice. And in doing so, I discovered who I really was. Not Adrian's wife, not a woman defined by her relationship, but Isabella Martinez, strong, strategic, capable of surviving anything. That discovery had been worth everything. Worth the pain, the anger, the long nights of planning. Worth the public humiliation, the difficult conversations, the exposure of private pain. Because on the other side was freedom. Real freedom. The kind that came from knowing yourself completely and refusing to accept less than you deserved. My phone buzzed. A text from Timothy, the first person I'd counseled. Just wanted to let you know, my divorce was finalized today. I got custody, kept my house, and my ex has to pay child support. Thank you for showing me how to fight back. Congratulations, I replied. Now go build something amazing. I will. You showed me it was possible. I set down my phone and closed my eyes, feeling the last rays of sun on my face. Somewhere out there, Adrian was living whatever life he'd built from the ruins of his own choices. Somewhere, Vanessa was hopefully learning to make better decisions. Somewhere, the people I'd helped were rebuilding their own lives. And here, in this moment, I was simply happy. Genuinely, completely, unquestionably happy. The revenge I'd planned 11 years ago had been perfect. Not because it destroyed Adrian, but because it liberated me. Not because it owed him, but because it protected me. Not because it was vindictive, but because it was just. I'd renewed my bank account instead of my vows. And I'd gained everything that mattered.